We're only 3 games into the 2021 season, but man, we are learning so much about this Oregon football team. Last week's game against Stony Brook served as a great opportunity for tons of players to get action, to get snaps, and get acclimated to the college level when you're looking at the freshmen. But I think one of the areas that has been really interesting to learn and kind of watch unfold so far this season has been junior DJ Johnson. Johnson spent all of last season playing tight end, but this year we've seen him make an impact on both sides of the ball. And I just kind of wanted to break him down and kind of what it looks like, what his role might look like moving forward this season here in 2021. So let's start with his offensive outlook and kind of what he brings to the table there. He's a big guy listed at 6'5", 273 pounds on the Oregon roster. The first fall scrimmage that was open to the media, some of the reporters were kind of talking, was he really 273 pounds? He didn't look quite that heavy, but either way, he's a big dude. And, he's certainly got the size that you are looking for at tight end. But last season, he definitely flashed against a couple Pac-12 teams. Let me pull up his stats real quick here. In the 2020 season, he had 10 catches for 113 yards and 3 touchdowns. So, a small sample size given a shortened COVID season. But when I was watching him last year, I rarely saw him get brought down by just one tackler. So the guy is just an absolute machine on offense, and he doesn't need very much room to get going. It speaks to his athleticism and how quick he is once he gets the ball in his hands for someone of his size. You look last year at his impact that he had on the offense. One of the games that sticks out the most to me has to be that USC game, the Pac-12 title game in Los Angeles. The play that sticks out to me was when Brown had the ball on 4th down. Brown is 4th and inches, and he's able to find Johnson on a little touch pass, and Johnson's able to reel it in and get a little bit of yardage after that to keep the chains moving, keep the clock running. And the Ducks eventually ended up scoring on that drive to help push ahead against USC and eventually take home the conference crown in 2020 for the second consecutive season. And then look at this year in 2021, Johnson's already having an impact at tight end yet again. He had a really big catch late in that game against Ohio State to get that first down, and then kind of the same deal, keep the offense going and, chip away at that clock late in that game. That was just an absolute slugfest of a game. And, the longer that the Ducks were able to keep the chains moving, then it just made it harder for Ohio State to come back. And so that's kind of what he brings to the table, just a very short glimpse on offense, but he's proven that he's able to contribute as a tight end. He moved over from defensive line last season, between the 19 and 20 seasons. He said he played some tight end at high school, so it wasn't too big of a transition for him. But now it's kind of interesting to see how he's going to be used this year because he's played a lot of defensive line so far here in the 2021 season. And I say a lot, 3 games is a very small sample size, but we saw him play defensive line against Ohio State and against Stony Brook. Ducks were obviously without Kayvon Thibodeaux in that Ohio State game, so the staff had to get a little creative. And what did they do? They trotted out DJ Johnson to play some defensive end for them, and man, he made some plays when it really mattered the most. The most important one, obviously, being the sack of C.J. Stroud late in the game. Last play of the game, Stroud can't escape Johnson, and that ultimately sealed Ohio State's fate and secured the win for Oregon. So for him to step up and make a play like that against the Ohio State offensive line, one of the programs that recruits at a top 5 level consistently, is certainly no small task. So that kind of brings this question to the table. Well, should the Ducks use him on offense or defense or both? And that's kind of what I want to get into here. I think when we're looking at the tight end room on this team, obviously there's been some injuries with Patrick Herbert and Cam McCormick. Looks like McCormick's out for the whole season. And I've seen Herbert on crutches around the facility. So it looks like he's probably going to be out for this season as well. So the room isn't necessarily it's not as deep as people were expecting it to be heading into this season. But freshmen Maliki Matavao and Terrence Ferguson have really shown up and adjusted to the college level quite quickly. Both those guys enrolled early in January. So we're already seeing the benefits of that with both of them having touchdowns here through the first 3 games. Matavao's was the final touchdown against Ohio State, and that would ultimately catapult the Ducks ahead late in that game. So the fact that he can contribute on the biggest stage the Ducks have played on in years just shows you how much confidence that the staff has in his ability, and his knowledge of the offense, his execution of the plays, what have you. So Montevallo looks like he's going to be a guy, and then Terrence Ferguson caught his first touchdown pass this past weekend against Stony Brook, and he's bringing some really good skills to the table as well. So the fact that both of those guys are playing really well, and then you have veteran Spencer Webb also in that room, kind of opens the door a little bit for DJ Johnson to maybe take on a bigger role on defense. So with that context, I was talking to Tim DeRuyter this week, and I asked him, given how well these guys are playing, these young freshman tight ends, what does DJ Johnson's outlook kind of look like on defense for the rest of this season? And DeRuyter had this to say: I see his role on defense elevating as we go forward, and we're just going to have to negotiate how much time he's with us versus how much time he's on offense. And DeRuyter talked about how he has some pass rushing ability and how he brings that to the table for this defense. Going on to say early in his career, he played defensive end, and he's got some natural pass rush ability. He's got the size, the strength, the strike that we're looking for, can be a very physical player. So there you have it from the defensive coordinator. Excuse me. The Ducks definitely have a guy that can make a big impact for them on the defensive line. And here's a cool little fact from the 2019 season, when Johnson last had a big role on the defensive line at Oregon. When you think back about how Oregon's defense was truly dominant in the 2019 year, DJ Johnson was one of only two players. Excuse me. Wow, I need some water. Was one of only two players with 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, and a forced fumble in one game. That game coming against Nevada. And then obviously had the big sack on CJ Stroud. But the real reason I see this as so intriguing for Oregon, the Ducks need another pass rusher. When Kayvon Thibodeau wasn't in the game against Ohio State, and Stony Brook for that matter, they struggled to get pressure on the opposing quarterback. We have a guy like Braden Swinson who's definitely flashed in fall camp. He was able to get home and get to the quarterback against Ohio State. But even when Thibodeau does come back, it looks like he should be back pretty soon here. This defense could go to a whole nother level if they can get another pass rusher on defense, I should say. So think about pairing Thibodeau with Johnson on the other end. You have a really strong pass rush, and then that gives you so much more flexibility to use Swinson situationally, and kind of bring him in when you want, because the Ducks do need some more depth on the defensive line. We're definitely seeing it on the offensive line with how Saleh, Stephen Jones, George Moore, Dawson Jaramillo, those guys are rotating so much, and there really hasn't been much of a drop-off there. But I think they do need some more depth on the defensive line. And credit to guys like Christian Williams, Jason Jones, Popo Mavai. They've all been stepping up, and I think that group is really poised to take a big leap, big picture this season. But I think bringing Johnson back maybe for a more full-time role on the defensive line could really help this team, could help the pass rush, which has been, an element that they've been lacking, which is kind of interesting when you see all the turnovers that they're forcing. But getting pressure on the quarterback is certainly one of the biggest elements that this defense needs to improve on, without Kayvon Thibodeau, because you look at big picture, this is Thibodeau's last year for sure. I mean, there's no reason he would come back another year. So they're going to need to find a solution for that pass rusher, whether it be on the recruiting trail or somebody already here in Eugene. Like I said, with Johnson being a junior, he has that option to come back for another year. So I think that DJ Johnson is certainly one of the more intriguing players on this Oregon roster, and a move back to defense could make a lot of sense for the 2021 season.